Welcome back to another episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. What's happening, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here. Of course, another Wednesday night, another episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, brought to you by 26shirts.com for all your Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Sabres, just Buffalo love apparel. Go to 26shirts.com, find yourself a great item and add to your Buffalo apparel repertoire, as I like to call it. So, of course, each and every Wednesday night, I love to bring you guys a great show. I try to bring you guys a great show in which I preview this week's upcoming game. But to start the show, I want to go back to Sunday, Monday, or in some cases Thursday's game. In this case, it was a Sunday. It was 1 o'clock. It was the Buffalo Bills taking on the Tennessee Titans. And I want to talk briefly about this game because I think there's a lot to kind of build off of within this win, and I'm really happy to say that the Buffalo Bills were the victor of this game because the first half, I'll be honest with you guys, the first half was really ugly. The first half was a half of football that I hope to never see from the Bills again, quite frankly, going up against an opponent that I really didn't have, I don't want to say I didn't have a lot of respect for, but an opponent nonetheless that, I mean, I couldn't name relatively, more than 10 players on the Tennessee Titans, one of which got traded this morning, DeAndre Hopkins. In his last game with the Tennessee Titans, he gets traded to the Kansas City Chiefs, and more on that a little bit later. But when I looked at this game, I thought there was no way that Tennessee would have enough firepower offensively to go against Buffalo's defense, and there was certainly no way that Tennessee's defense, without Ladarius Sneed, without a few other guys, would be able to go toe-to-toe against the great Josh Allen. And the first half, it looked more not necessarily that, the Tennessee Titans had the Bills' number or anything like that, but it was more about how Buffalo's offense was kind of finding their footing. And that footing that they're looking for could be in a lot of different ways. Could be with, Keon Coleman, trying to get him involved. Could be with Amari Cooper, a new acquisition, trying to get him involved. Could be this run offense, which we saw great things from Ray Davis last week, and James Cook is finally back. So we want to get, the dual set running backs involved. There was just a lot of, I think, trying too much with this offense that I think plagued the Bills in the first half. And plagued Joe Brady specifically, the offensive coordinator, trying to do a little bit too much and maybe overthinking things rather than just calling a methodical move the chains type offense. And that's what I have, kind of analyzed over these last few weeks is that I want just easy, methodical, move the chains, get the ball out of your hand, Josh Allen. I don't want this, okay, are we going to run? Are we going to fake? Are we going to pass? Are we going to make sure we feed such and such? That's what we talked about in the offseason with the departure of Stephon Diggs, where it looked like for a long time Josh Allen was kind of thinking out there too much. When Josh Allen thinks out there too much, that's when things start to kind of unravel. When Josh Allen is just free to play his game and free to run the show and free to call the offense as he sees fit, that's when Josh Allen can really do some magical things. And that was the contrast to me from the first half against Tennessee to the second half against Tennessee. And I'm thankful that all in all, the Bills moved to 5-2 with a massive second half against the Tennessee Titans. This was a drubbing in the second half. If I were to pull up the stat sheet for this game, 34-10. Mind you, going into the half, it was 10-7. It was, okay, what is going on here with the Buffalo Bills? But all in all, it turned out, statistically, if you looked at the stats, if you looked at the final score, you'd never know that the first half was 10-7. Josh Allen, 21-33, 323 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Ray Davis, 5 carries, 41 yards and a rushing touchdown. James Cook, 12 carries, 32 yards. Yes, that yards per carry average was extremely low, but 1 rushing touchdown in his own right. But make no mistake about it, this game to me signaled a change from the previous, 6 weeks with this Buffalo Bills offense. The addition of Keon Coleman via the draft was one that I think was met with so much, I guess, skepticism. The critics were really ripping the pick apart when Buffalo decided to trade down and move down twice with the Kansas City Chiefs, as well as the Carolina Panthers, allowing the Chiefs to go after Xavier Worthy and allowing the Carolina Panthers to draft Xavier Legette, who was a sexy pick by the Bills Mafia for their Buffalo Bills, only to take Keon Coleman. But I'm here to tell you that the arrival of Keon Coleman has already begun. Post this game against the Tennessee Titans, we're seeing a guy that is starting to get more comfortable in this offense. We're seeing a guy that is more comfortable in his skills, knowing what he can do, knowing what he, quote unquote, can't do as well. And I think the way he's being utilized is a credit to his strengths underneath or one-on-one in physical matchups where he can out-muscle or out-physical the corner, show that physicality. And to me, I think the sky's the limit for this kid, especially when you talk about the mix of pieces that Buffalo has on this offense. And this is an offense, guys, that a lot of you out there were saying that this offense was going to be a lot worse without Stephon Diggs. This offense wasn't going to be able to find its footing. In a lot of ways, you guys were right, because through the first, 6 weeks of the season, as I just stated, things have looked a little funny for this offense. Josh Allen's averaged 213 passing yards per game, his lowest total per game since his rookie season. So those are numbers that you hear those numbers and you say something's not right. Why is Josh Allen not successful? Well, the receivers are not able to separate. The receivers are not able to get open. Well, this receiver group has undergone a myriad of changes heading into the season, and it's gone through changes during the season, namely the addition of Amari Cooper, which I think is what is leading to this arrival of Keon Coleman. And there was a lot of times where even when Amari Cooper wasn't out on the field, as he suffered a little bit of an ankle kind of calf cramp during the game, Keon Coleman was still doing his thing, still able to find success. So to me, I think the sky is the limit for a Keon Coleman. And I think that the skill translates to what teams want out of their wide receivers in this day and age of football. They want a guy that's physical. They want a guy that can go up and get the ball. They want a guy that can go toe-to-toe with whoever is given the task of covering him. And to me, I've seen a lot of great things, even in weeks where Keon Coleman doesn't put up the numbers that he did last week, which were 4 catches, 125 yards, averaging 30 yards per catch. He was a big play threat in this game against the Tennessee Titans. Big play threat. So I look at this as a huge moment for Keon's development, huge moment for Keon's career, huge moment for Keon inside the Buffalo Bills offense, and the arrival has only just begun of this kid. I don't want to hear any more about where the Buffalo should have taken Xavier Worthy. I don't want to hear any more about where the Buffalo should have taken Xavier Legette or should they have taken Brian Thomas Jr. The numbers don't lie. Keon's got better numbers than Legette. Keon's got better numbers than than Worthy. And he's got better numbers than just about any other rookie wide receiver outside of Malik Neighbors. So to me, it's very exciting to say, okay, Josh Allen wanted X receiver. He gets this guy. He gets Keon Coleman, a guy that is someone that he wanted. And he's making it work with someone that he wanted. Now we have a quarterback not only that is a game breaker, a franchise guy, top to bottom, but we have a quarterback now that is in a uncharted territory, the likes of which only the elite of the elite experience. The Peyton Mannings, the Tom Bradys, the Big Bens, all those great quarterbacks that we've watched over the last 15, 20 years, and even the guys dating back, the Montanas, the Kellys, the Marinos, maybe they couldn't go out and say who they wanted because that wasn't necessarily the free agent era, but they could run their offense. And I think that's what Josh Allen was given the opportunity to do, was to say, hey, Brandon Beane, I want this guy. I want this guy. Go out and get me Dalton Kincaid. Go out and get me Keon Coleman. Those are the guys that I can work with. And I think that those are two key pieces to this offense. But let's just call a spade here. And I've touched on this already, but the offense was struggling prior to the second half of this game. The offense was struggling prior to this game against Houston, against Baltimore. We were feeling like even against the New York Jets, there were moments where they couldn't get anything going. You have to add sometimes in order to make, a change. Subtract, add, subtract, add. Well, from the moment that the Buffalo Bills decided to trade Stephon Diggs away to the Houston Texans, to the NFL draft, drafting only Keon Coleman at that position, that is the wide receiver position, I didn't feel like they adequately did add. My criticism of Brandon Beane in this, subject matter, I should say, is not that Brandon Beane drafted Keon Coleman. It's that Brandon Beane only drafted one wideout in this draft. And the guys that they signed were guys that I, would have rather had I would have rather they had drafted someone else, Keon Coleman and another wideout in the third or fourth round. Keon Coleman and somebody else in the third and fourth round, rather than spending a lot of money on a wideout that doesn't necessarily fit their offense. And I think that is Curtis Samuel. I hate to say it, but judging from what we've seen so far, it sure looks that way. They got to make them fit, but they've been unable to do that in 7 weeks thus far. So that is a concern, a real concern, given the money that he's making. But it's another talking point. It's a sidebar point. My point is, post-Diggs, post-draft, there wasn't an adequate addition outside of Keon Coleman made to the wide receiver position until the Buffalo Bills went out and made this trade for Amari Cooper. And I talked about it last week, but to kind of add to the sentence that you're reading right now on the live stream, the addition of Amari Cooper has already showed that when you add a receiver that has been proven in this league to produce wherever he's played, with whatever quarterback has thrown him the football, from Derek Carr to Deshaun Watson to Joe Flacco to Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper has shown out 7 1,000-yard seasons as a pro, and I think potentially he could be the catalyst to this offense, as he showed in the second half against Tennessee. We could be talking about, by the end of the season, Amari Cooper's 8th 1,000-yard season, which would mean that in an 11-week span, he's only got about 300 yards, but in an 11-week span, he'd have to get about 800 yards, which are 700 yards, which I think is quite possible with this quarterback, with this offense, and with his talent. But it's already showed that when you add a player of his caliber, that he can get other guys open. I've talked about this all the time. I mean, when the Patriots were really at the top, they were really in their prime, when they were really firing on all cylinders, was when they had Randy Moss. Now, I'm not saying that Amari Cooper is Randy Moss. There's only one Randy Moss, and he was in the first ballot Hall of Fame for a reason, right? Greatest deep threat that I've ever seen, right? But as great as Tom Brady was prior to the Patriots going out and getting Randy Moss, they went undefeated with that guy in the regular season. 18-1, finished the season, one game, one win short in the Super Bowl. But adding a player, what did that do for the Wes Welkers? What did that do for the Dante Stallworths? It did a lot. They didn't just win 18 games in a row just throwing to one guy. They won 18 games in a row, mixing the football around, throwing it around to wherever they could. And to me, I think that's what makes an offense that much more dangerous when you do not know which guy to double cover. Do you double cover Kincaid? It's a worthy thought. He's an athletic, supreme talent tight end that the league has very few of at this time. And you want to talk about just from a fantasy perspective, Dalton Kincaid hasn't really had a great year so far. But with the addition of Amari Cooper, what that did for Keon this past week, what could that mean for Dalton Kincaid? Could mean a lot for Dalton Kincaid. Could mean a lot for Dawson Knox. Could mean a lot for Khalil Shakir. Could mean a lot for James Cook out of the backfield catching passes. So I think that this addition was so needed, not even necessarily to just add the talent of an Amari Cooper, but to bring more targets to more open wideouts. So I am really encouraged heading into this week against Seattle, coming off of a big resounding win over the Tennessee Titans. And as I mentioned, is the Tennessee Titans, the biggest win of the year? No, it's not going to be now. It's not going to be by the end of the season. But I will tell you that you can build off of this. I think this could be the win to date where Buffalo could really change their season and use this as a springboard, so to speak, for their upcoming games that are crucial, pivotal. And this one, look no further. This is the Bills versus Seahawks preview portion of the show. So previewing next week's game, Sunday, 4:05. And this is a toughie. This is a tough matchup because I think if you're playing the Seattle Seahawks, there's a lot of things there. There's Kenneth Walker, there's Tyler Lockett, potentially without DK Metcalf, but with DK Metcalf, we know what he brings to the table. And there's this supremely talented Jackson Smith and Jigba. But out of all those guys, there's this quarterback in Seattle that has had a rebirth of a career that labeled him a first round or high draft quarterback bust. Shouldn't say first round because he was a second rounder in 2013. I remember it very well when the Buffalo Bills decided to draft E.J. Manuel in the first round of the 2013 NFL draft. And Geno Smith was labeled as the best quarterback of that class out of West Virginia. He then goes to the New York Jets in the second round. Has a turbulent career with the Jets, bounces around backup to backup spots. I couldn't even tell you where he played, to be quite honest with you, off the top of my head. But man, this guy has turned his career around. He is an adequate starting quarterback in this league. He is consistent, and he is average. I mean, that is a compliment. I'm not going to say that Geno Smith belongs in the same conversation as Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or Pat Mahomes, but I will say he's a top 12, 15 at worst quarterback in this league. And that's a damn compliment from where he was with the New York Jets. There was talk that Geno was never going to play it down in this league ever again. So he is an anomaly that I think is good for the NFL. So I want to tip my cap here to Geno Smith, paying a little bit of respect to the opponent, knowing the opponent as well as I do, that Geno Smith is a guy that just finds the open guy. He does not want to make a mistake. He just wants to keep it simple, find the open guy, get it to his weapons, and definitely avoid turning the football over, because those are the only things that can kind of get Geno Smith into a little bit of trouble. When he starts to turn the football over, when he starts to feel like he's in quicksand, things start to unravel, as they do for most quarterbacks. But the key to that, the best friend of an average quarterback, is a great run game. And I think that's where the Seattle Seahawks really separate themselves from any other opponent outside of Baltimore the Buffalo's faced this season. Kenneth Walker III is a true throwback, to the great running backs of yesteryear, to the Earl Campbells, to the he's not necessarily like a power runner only. He can run you over. He could make you look silly. He's a total threat of a running back, and he was somebody that I really liked coming out of his draft 4 or 5 years ago now. And when the then head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, Pete Carroll, decided to replace Marshawn Lynch with Kenneth Walker, I just chuckled because they're very similar. You know, they're bruisers, they're durable, they're nasty, and they can really win you the time of possession battle, which I think is going to be key to this game. If Seattle can expose Buffalo's inability to stop the run further than what we've already seen, this could be a really tough matchup for them. And just looking at things from a analytical standpoint, an honest, open standpoint, the Bills' defense has changed its identity, but the results remain the same. It's bend, but don't break. It's very frustrating to watch when you want to see your defense, make a big stop. And they made a bunch of big stops against Tennessee. As the game wore on, Tony Pollard was unable to run the football effectively. I hope Sean McDermott can go back to the whiteboard, can go back to the tape, and figure out just why can't this front seven manage to effectively stop the run for 4 straight quarters. It's a lot easier said than done. I get that. But opening a game, these big chunk runs to start a game are really what could be a killer to this Buffalo Bills team, because you have to think, guys, from a football 101 standpoint, I just talked about time of possession. The team that you're playing against is able to run the football effectively. Not only can they wear down the clock, they keep your defense on the field and they keep your offense off of the field, which in this case keeps Josh Allen, the best player on the Bills, off the field, which is a great, great strategy for anyone essentially facing the Bills with a above average running back in the case of the Baltimore Ravens and in the case of the Seattle Seahawks. So I see some parameters, some intangibles that make the Seahawks very similar to what we experienced in Baltimore. And I hope that Sean McDermott and the coaching staff can go back to that game and look at what went wrong, and look at even this past week against Tennessee, where we saw Tony Pollard rattle off some big chunk gains that I thought were ridiculous, that I thought were players just out of position. The front seven looking like they're getting pushed off the line. The Bills linebacker core looking like they, are too light. And I do have a concern about this, because not only is the Bills run defense susceptible and a little bit weak, but their linebackers, Matt Milano's been out, 2 of the last 3 years. Dorian Williams has been a revelation. I think he's going to be the starting outside linebacker from here on out. I know that's a hot take, and I know a lot of Bills fans that love Matt Milano feel like that's a little bit too soon for me to say. But I just see the writing on the wall. This guy is another mid-round linebacker that is making plays, that is playing in for Matt Milano, who once again is not healthy, and dollars aplenty for Matt Milano. So I think, there could be some real business decisions there. But furthermore, I love Terrell Bernard. You guys know that I was a big champion for Terrell Bernard. When the Bills decided to make that decision to let Tremaine Edmonds walk in free agency and promote from within, I was a big supporter of Terrell Bernard. But the best ability, I've always said this, is availability. And Terrell Bernard just seemingly can't stay healthy. Anytime he comes back, he's back for a week, and then you see him on the ground 3 or 4 times a game. And I think that Buffalo has decent linebacker depth, but I think in 2025, that has to be a major, major priority. So all in all, back to the Bills versus Seahawks preview, giving you a score prediction. Listen, guys, I think this is going to be a really close game. It's going to be one that the Bills can win playing to their strengths, but Buffalo's defense especially, the spotlight is on you guys to stop the run, force Geno Smith to play quarterback like Josh Allen, force Geno Smith to roll out of the pocket, force Geno Smith to make throws that he's uncomfortable making. That's what leads the Buffalo Bills to victory. Josh Allen will just take care of the rest because Josh Allen just does what Josh Allen always does. Letting Josh Allen be the guy to win you a game in this game is not going to be the ticket to get you to a W. I think this game is going to be won by Buffalo's defense. It has to be, and let the offense take care of the rest. Give the offense more opportunities to work, and don't allow the Seattle Seahawks to run the clock down on you, to wear you down, to keep Josh Allen off the field. So all in all, I think Buffalo's going to win this game. I think it's going to be close, as I mentioned. I think it's going to be a 28-24 victory for the Buffalo Bills, moving to 6-2, heading into another big game coming up. Looking at the schedule here, schedule's not in front of me here, so bear with me. But I definitely think that they play Miami at home the following week. So. They want Tua back. He's coming back. It's going to be interesting what happens in Miami, but the Kansas City Chiefs just got better, guys. They just got DeAndre Hopkins. He's a good player. He's a guy that I wanted Buffalo to go out and get for a long time. There was rumblings that he was going to go to either KC, Buffalo, San Francisco for a long, long time. And thankfully, my mic muted there. My apologies. Thankfully, we did get Amari Cooper. So it's an arms race. Bills get Amari Cooper. Jets get Devontae Adams. Chiefs get DeAndre Hopkins. Coincidence? I think not. But all in all, I'm really pumped up for this Sunday's game. It's at 4:05 on Fox, which is a little bit different for us because it's out in the West Coast, but get some errands done, get some things done, maybe go out for a nice lunch, and just kick back at 4:05, guys, and have a good time. Enjoy this game coming up. Really hope you enjoyed this week's show. Buffalo fan base, thank you so much for tuning in on the fan base. And as well, I want to remind you guys, you can subscribe to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast on YouTube, Facebook. Follow me on X at Ryan Thomas Take. And if you want to listen to me on your drive into work, just download, follow on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you can listen to a podcast. The Thomas Take Sports Podcast is out there. Last and certainly not least, go